welcome back to Little Lab at Home with the Museum of Life and Science. My name is Peregrine and Catalyst volunteer Caroline is moderating the chat today. As always, I hope that all of you will help lead our program with your thoughts and questions and ideas in the moderated chat box. So today we are talking about making something to help us see things that are very small. I wanted to ask all of you, what is the smallest thing you can think of? What's the smallest thing you can think of? You can let me know in the chat. It can be something that's small that you can still see with your eyes, or it can be something that you need special machinery to see. Oh, I have a friend saying bacteria. Ooh, we have someone saying atoms. We have a friend saying dust. Oh, sand. Someone was saying the whole of my straw. That's true. There are definitely some very tiny straws out there. There are a lot of tiny things out there and our eyes can only see so much. So sometimes we use something to help us see something small, kind of like the things all of my friends were saying. What is something we can use to help us see things that are very small? What do you think? Oh, my friend is saying you could use a microscope. For sure, a microscope, sort of like a telescope for things that are really small. We could also use a magnifying glass. Oh, you guys are on it. So if we want to see things that are very small, we can use something like a microscope. Now, I don't know about all of you, but I don't have a microscope here with me today, but I have a couple common household materials that we can make a sort of microscope out of. It's kind of somewhere between a magnifying lens and a microscope. So let's talk about what we will need for making our microscope today. I'm going to go ahead to my experiment cam so I can show you the different supplies that we will need. All right, my friends, we are here in experiment cam mode. Let's talk about what we need for this experiment. For this experiment, you will need some clear tape. I have two different kinds here. I have some packing tape, which is really super clear. This is kind of, this is ideal if we can get some super clear tape. And I also just have some regular Scotch tape here, which is pretty clear, but sometimes this type of tape can be a little bit cloudy. And that's okay, it'll still work for our purposes, but I was gonna try out using both of them. I also have a cup. You can use a paper cup, you can use a plastic cup. Your cup doesn't have to be as tiny as mine is. This is just the one that I had here, this paper cup. I also have some scissors, and I have some white paper, and I have a light source here. I'm going to be using this as a light source. Sometimes I also may use my phone as a light source, and I'll show you why in just a minute. And then the last thing I have is some water. I'm going to jump back to face cam really quickly so we can talk a little bit about how we're going to put these pieces together to make something that can help us see things that are small. All right. So we were talking about microscopes earlier. And a microscope has main parts that let us see things that are small, right? It has a kind of a part where you can look in. It has some little dials to adjust your vision. It has a place for you to put your specimen or your tiny thing you're looking at. It has a light. Our microscopes aren't going to have all of that, but they will have a light source, a stand, and they will have a lens. So a lens is what makes our microscopes work. I have lenses in my glasses. Basically, it's something that's clear and it's a little bit curved. So that curve is what helps us see tiny things. If we're just looking through some clear, straight material, like looking out a window, it wouldn't really change how big or small things appear to us. But if we're looking through a different kind of shape, like a convex shape, then it bends light and shows it to us looking a little bit bigger. I'll show you what I mean by convex shape here. When we're talking about something that is convex shape, we mean something that's shaped kind of like a dome. And this is where our water comes in. So if I have a drop of water like this, and I put it onto my lens, if I look at it on the side, you can see that it doesn't lay flat. Water is very polar, which means it likes to stick to itself, almost like glue in some ways. So it makes these nice little beads on a surface like this that creates this dome shape. Now it's clear, so we can still see through it, but I think you can even see like this. It changes what we see behind it because it is curved. So water is going to act as our lens. Here's what we're going to use to make our microscope. We're going to start at the very bottom with our stand. That's where your cup comes in. What I want us to do together is to cut the top, I guess the bottom, off of our cup so that we can see through it. I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. And I like to kind of try and make a hole in it very carefully to start off. There we go. And I'm going to cut a hole in it, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not going to make it perfect. And what I've got here, you can see, is a very imperfect hole, but it will definitely work for the purposes I need it for. I'm cutting out a hole here because my light source will go underneath, and I want my light source to shine through. Now, if I just had it shining through the bottom of a cup, right, this is a little bit thicker and it will block more light than I want. So we've just cut a hole in the bottom of our cup, and we're gonna cover it up with something that is thinner than the bottom of our cup. That's our piece of paper. Right, so we're taking off the bottom and we're putting back on a thinner version of it. We're going to cut our paper. We don't have to cut a perfect circle. We can just cut a square shape. There we go. That's about the right size for our cup. So you can see I cut this here pretty quickly, didn't make it perfect, that's okay. And then I just kind of cut a square shape that's big enough to go on top of my cup. So if we want, we can leave it here like this, but I know that I'm gonna be moving mine around. So what I'm gonna do next is tape this part onto my cup. I'm gonna take some of my tape, 2 pieces here, and I'm just gonna tape it down onto my cup, like that. That is just so I don't accidentally knock it off while I am doing my experiment. So right now we've got the stand of our microscope. We've got a cup, we've got a hole in the cup, we've got the hole in the cup covered up by a thin piece of white paper, and we've taped our white paper down. Okay, so we have the stand. Depending on what kind of light source you have and what size cup you have, you may be able to put your light source underneath your cup. Now, this is something that I could do if I wanted to use this, but since I want to demonstrate mine for my experiment cam, I need something that's a flat light source. So I'm going to be using my phone's light when we do our observation in just a minute. So we have our light source, and the light source is going to go underneath the cup. We want to put as much light inside that cup as we can so that it lights up this white piece of paper really well. When we look at small things, we need a lot of light so we can see those tiny details. All right, so we've covered most of our microscope. We just have one last piece, and that is the lens. Now, we talked about it earlier. Water is going to be our lens, but we have to have something to put some water on. What we need is a clear piece of something that's fairly rigid, meaning it's not going to flop around or anything like that, so that we can hold a drop of water on it. You could use something like I cut this from a piece of packaging. So this is a clear piece of packaging that you could use if you wanted. It's also pretty easy just to use tape. So let's say that you're using tape like me. to start to make your lens. What we're gonna do is rip off a piece like this, and I'm just gonna have mine be about that big. You can do it a little bit bigger if you want to. We're gonna be folding it in half. So if you're thinking about the size, it's going to be as big as half of this. I'm gonna go ahead and rip mine off. We can also do that with our scissors if we want to. So we've got our piece of tape, and I don't want any sticky parts. So I'm going to carefully fold it in half, like this. Now I'm going to smooth it out really slowly and carefully so that I don't get too many air bubbles. That's my goal, right? Because if I smush this down and I get some air in it, that might distort my surface. So I'm just going to be as careful as I can, smoothing it out like that. There we go, almost finished. I've smoothed mine out really well. I can see that there are still a few air bubbles in there, so I'm going to put it down on the table and try to push some of those out like that. So here is part of my lens. It's not really a lens yet, it's just a clear piece of plastic, because we need something that bends in that dome shape, that convex shape, meaning shaped like a dome. What we want to do is get just one drop of water and put it on top of our piece of tape. As we saw before, when we put a little drop of water on it, it creates a bit of that convex dome shape on the side here. Of course, if you tilt it too much, your water might drop off. So we want to keep it fairly level when we're working with it. And all I'm doing is dipping my finger in water and putting a drop on my piece of tape. Now we want ours to be pretty much circular if we can. Mine's not super circular. And it's a little tricky. We have to make sure it's not so small that we can't look through it. But we also want it to be a very curved dome. And the bigger our drop is, the less curved it will be. All right, here I am back on face cam. Here are the different parts of our microscope that we've made. We have our stand, right? We've got our light source, whether that's going to be me using my phone or a flashlight or something like that. And now I have my lens. You can kind of see the tiny little shape of water on there. And this is going to be kind of our eyepiece that we're looking through, right? So when we're looking through it, it will look like this. We're going to hold it up to our eye, and we're going to move it up and down until whatever we're looking at starts to look clear. So it depends on what we're looking at. I've made some different slides of stuff I want to look at. Let's make some slides. Slides are the things that we're looking at under the microscope. It's often really helpful to have it cut up into a thin piece so that we can look at it really closely and it doesn't block the light coming through. So I'll show you how I'm making my slides here so that you can make one of your own. When I'm making a slide, all I need is my tape again, and you can use your packing tape. I just happened to pick this one up. You grab a piece of tape and you grab whatever you're going to be looking at, your specimen. So here's another little piece of moss. All you're going to do is put it down on your tape like that, and you're going to fold it over. Basically, we're just trying to flatten it out. That's so that we can see the image all kind of at the same time, and so that the light can shine through the parts of it that it's possible to shine through. It'll just help us see what we're trying to look at a little bit better. So here is my slide of my moss. It's looking pretty good there. I can see some air bubbles in there, and that's okay. But this is going to help me look at that moss really kind of flatly. So I'm going to put all of my pieces together, and it can look a couple of ways. If I use my flashlight, right, and I turn it on, I put my stand on top of it, and I can put whatever I'm going to look at on top of it too. Now, once I have my water drop lens, I can use that to look at my object. I can also use a light source that's flat, right? So I could use the flashlight on my phone, and I could put my stand on top of it like that. Now I've got a good light source going, and I can look at whatever it is I want to look at on top of it. This is helpful for me because it can be flat, and I don't know about you, but you never realize how much your hands kind of shake a tiny bit until you're trying to look at something very small, and then those tiny movements suddenly become very big. So this will be helpful for me because I'll be able to put it down on the table so that you can see a little bit of what I'm seeing. I'm going to use a special camera that I have that does look at things very closely. It's a little different than a water drop, but I just thought it could show us a little bit of the kind of close-up world we're looking for. So I'll have you choose between some specimen to look at. I have a rose petal. I have a piece of a mushroom. I saw this wild mushroom growing. And I have a piece of moss. Let me know which one you want to look at first under the microscope. Flower, mushroom, moss. Oh, one of our friends said that they're looking at some grass and leaves. Ooh, and ground coffee. That is an interesting idea. I'd love to know what ground coffee looks like. We have one vote for mushroom. I think let's take a quick look at our mushroom. We have another vote for mushroom. Perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm setting up my microscope here, and I'm going to switch us to a different camera. This is my micro cam. I see we have a vote for the flower too. We'll do that one next. I'm going to switch to my micro cam here, and I'm going to put it on top of my specimen so that you can see it. Wow, that looks very beautiful. You can kind of see the stem of the mushroom there. You can even see some parts of the mushroom's gills. This is the bottom of the mushroom. You can see the top of it. Wow, that looks really interesting. I would not have noticed some of these color differences. I don't think I could tell by looking at it that there were some gray stripes and some kind of almost more brown stripes. That's so interesting. So here is my mushroom. Great choice. And we have a friend who wants to look at the flower petal, also an excellent choice. I was very interested to see this one. Sounds like we have some friends looking at leaves as well, another great choice. So this is a really cool look. I can look at the bottom of my flower petal here, and I start to see these beautiful veins. And I can see those with my naked eye, but when I'm looking up close, I notice so many more details. And I can see how the color starts to change like this. It's also interesting to look at the edges. Look, I wouldn't be able to see all those interesting little veins with just my eyes. So that's pretty beautiful. We have a friend, this is a good comment. My friend was saying it looks kind of slimy. You know, that is true. And part of that comes from the kind of micro cam that I'm using. It shines a light down through its lens. So the light is reflecting off of the tape I'm using. Looking, good observation. Let's take one last look at some of my moss here. This looks so beautiful up close to me. When I look at moss just from standing up, right? When I'm walking around and I see moss, it just kind of looks like a little green carpet. But when I look closely here, it almost looks like it has little branches. There's so many different things to look at. I'm going to bring it really quickly back to my face cam here. There are so many different things to look at, not only natural materials, but stuff all around you, like salt or coffee grounds. Another fun thing I like to do is take a little bit of tape, like that, and I like to stick it to my shirt or to my pants to catch all the little fibers that are there. It's hard to see, but there are teeny tiny fibers on here, and if I fold this together, it's like I have a brand new slide to look at. So if we looked at this, we'd be able to see some cool little tiny fibers. In fact, maybe that'll be the last thing we look at before we head out for the day, my friends. So there's the fuzzies from my shirt. You can see my slide is a little bit wrinkled because I folded it really quickly, but check that out. You can see all of the tiny little fibers, the teal fibers from my shirt. And it's interesting because there's other colors on there too. Wouldn't have known that unless I looked really closely. That's all the time we have for today. I hope that all of you will continue to experiment with your water drop lenses and will continue to explore the tiny world because there is so much more to look at once we can see it properly. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope that we'll see you next week. We have a really special guest. Her name is Heather Chandler. She's a video game developer. She helped develop the video game Fortnite along with a lot of other ones. We're going to talk with her about what she does, and we're going to do a programming activity using Play-Doh. It's going to be a really fun one. I hope I'll see you all there.